The rifle that won the Pacific, M1 Garand vs. Arisaka opening, Henderson Field, October 24, 1942. The darkness at Henderson Field was absolute. Private Robert Youngdeer of the 164th Infantry Regiment gripped his M1 Garand, fingers checking the 8-round EN block clip one final time. His unit had arrived on Guadalcanal just 11 days earlier, making them the first U.S. Army formation to engage in offensive operations against the Japanese in the Pacific theater. Around him, Marines held their positions with bolt-action Springfield rifles, watching these Army newcomers with their semi-automatic weapons. The humid night air pressed down like a wet blanket, filled with the constant buzz of insects. Then came the sound that would haunt American soldiers for generations, thousands of voices screaming Banzai, Totsugeki, as Japanese forces launched their massive attack. On the other side of the battlefield, Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto led his platoon forward through the darkness. His Type 38 Arisaka rifle, with its exceptionally long 31.4-inch barrel, caught on vines and branches. The 5-round internal magazine held 6.5 by 50 mm cartridges. Each shot required him to work the bolt up, back, forward, down, every single time. What happened in the next 12 hours would demonstrate why American infantry possessed an overwhelming advantage that the Japanese never anticipated. This is the story of two rifles, two philosophies of warfare, and how industrial innovation determined the outcome of combat in the Pacific. Part 1. Genesis of the Garand. John Cantius Garand began work at Springfield Armory in 1919 with an impossible mission: create a semi-automatic rifle reliable enough for military service. For 17 years he refined, tested, and perfected his design. On January 9, 1936, the U.S. Army officially adopted the M1 Garand, making America the first nation to issue a semi-automatic rifle as standard infantry equipment. The rifle fired the powerful .30-06 Springfield cartridge, launching a 150-grain M2 ball projectile at 2,800 feet per second from its 24-inch barrel, generating 2,656 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. The genius lay in Garand's gas-operated rotating bolt system. A small portion of propellant gas tapped from a port near the muzzle drove an operating rod that cycled the action automatically. Each trigger pull fired one round, with gas pressure automatically ejecting the spent case and chambering the next round without any manual intervention from the shooter. A trained soldier could accurately fire between 40 and 50 aimed shots per minute, compared to 15 to 20 rounds achievable with a bolt-action rifle. The 8-round EN block clip inserted from above could be reloaded in under 3 seconds by a practiced rifleman. Development hadn't been smooth. Early prototypes used a primer-actuated system that proved unreliable. The rifle was originally designed for the .276 Pedersen cartridge, but General Douglas MacArthur intervened in 1932, insisting on retention of the .30-06 Springfield round to utilize existing ammunition stockpiles. This decision delayed production but ultimately proved fortunate. The powerful cartridge provided excellent long-range performance and stopping power. Part 2. The Arisaka Legacy. The Arisaka rifles traced their lineage to Colonel Nariakira Arisaka's original Type 30 design of 1897, developed to replace inadequate Murata rifles then in service. By World War II, Japanese forces primarily fielded two variants, the Type 38, adopted in 1905, and the Type 99 introduced in 1939. The Type 38 fired the 6.5 by 50 mm semi-rimmed cartridge with a 139-grain bullet at 2,500 feet per second, generating approximately 1,650 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. The Type 99 used the more powerful 7.7 by 58 mm cartridge, firing a 182-grain bullet at 2,400 feet per second with 2,300 foot-pounds of energy. Both Arisaka variants were bolt-action rifles with 5-round internal magazines loaded via stripper clips. The Type 38's exceptional 31.4-inch barrel length made it one of the longest infantry rifles ever fielded, contributing to excellent long-range accuracy but proving extremely cumbersome in jungle combat where engagement distances rarely exceeded 100 yards. The Arisaka action itself was remarkably strong. Post-war testing proved it stronger than the American Springfield, British Lee Enfield, or German Mauser actions. The rifles featured an innovative safety mechanism that could be operated silently, and the bolt design incorporated a gas escape system to protect the shooter in case of a ruptured cartridge case. However, these engineering achievements could not overcome the fundamental limitation of manual bolt operation in an era of increasing firepower. After each shot, the soldier had to manually cycle the bolt through 4 distinct movements, rotating the bolt handle upward, pulling it fully rearward to extract and eject the spent case, pushing it forward to strip a fresh round from the magazine and chamber it, then rotating the handle down to lock. This process broke the shooter's firing position, disrupted sight alignment, and required 2 to 3 seconds even for well-trained soldiers. Part 3. Industrial Might vs. Limited Resources. Between 1936 and 1945, American factories produced approximately 5.4 million M1 Garand rifles. Springfield Armory led production with 3.5 million rifles, while Winchester Repeating Arms Company contributed 513,880 rifles. Peak production at Springfield Armory reached 1,000 rifles per day by January 1944, with Winchester achieving 600 rifles daily at their height. This massive output ensured that virtually every American infantry soldier and Marine in the Pacific carried the semi-automatic rifle by mid-1943. The U.S. military's allocation system prioritized combat units, with the Marine Corps receiving 22,000 M1 Garands per month in early 1943. American M1 Garand production maintained remarkably consistent quality throughout the war. Springfield Armory's quality control procedures rejected any rifle that failed to group within 5 inches at 100 yards. Interchangeability of parts between rifles from different manufacturers was strictly enforced. A damaged M1 Garand could be repaired in the field using parts salvaged from other rifles regardless of manufacturer. Japanese production presented a starkly different picture. From 1905 to 1945, Japan manufactured approximately 3 million Type 38 rifles across multiple arsenals. Type 99 production from 1939 to 1945 reached roughly 3.5 million units manufactured at 9 different arsenals. Despite these substantial numbers totaling over 6 million rifles, Japan never achieved the production rates necessary to fully modernize their infantry arms. More critically, Japanese manufacturing quality deteriorated markedly as the war progressed. Early Type 99 rifles featured remarkable innovations: chrome-lined barrels, actually the first military rifle with this feature, anti-aircraft sights with folding arms for leading aerial targets, dust covers to protect the action, and integral wire monopods for stability. By 1944, these refinements had vanished under production pressure and material shortages. Last-ditch rifles exhibited rough machining marks, simplified fixed rear sights, wooden butt plates replacing metal, and inferior wood with poor fitting. Some final production rifles lacked even basic finishing, with visible tool marks on all metal surfaces. The chrome lining disappeared as chromium became scarce, monopods were eliminated, and even the imperial chrysanthemum marking became crudely stamped rather than precisely rolled. Part 4. Ammunition. The Logistics War. The .30-06 Springfield cartridge used by the M1 Garand was already standard throughout the U.S. military for the M1903 Springfield rifle, M1917 Browning machine gun, M1919 Browning machine gun, and Browning automatic rifle. This commonality simplified logistics immensely. A single ammunition type could supply rifles, automatic rifles, and machine guns. American ammunition production was staggering. The Lake City Army ammunition plant alone could produce 200 million rounds annually by 1943. Frankfurt Arsenal, Denver Ordnance Plant, and other facilities added hundreds of millions more rounds. Quality control ensured consistent ballistics. M2 ball ammunition maintained a velocity variation of less than 40 feet per second between lots. Japanese forces faced a more complex ammunition situation. Units equipped with Type 38 rifles required 6.5 by 50 mm semi-rimmed ammunition, while those with Type 99s needed 7.7 by 58 mm rounds. This two-caliber system created persistent logistics problems. Documented instances reveal the chaos. The 23rd Infantry Regiment on Guadalcanal received 7.7 mm ammunition for their Type 38 rifles, rendering both weapons and ammunition useless. Similar mix-ups occurred during the Philippines campaign and on isolated island garrisons. The 6.5 mm round, while generating less recoil and allowing soldiers to carry more ammunition, proved inadequate against covered positions and lacked stopping power. The 7.7 mm round addressed these deficiencies but created that dual supply requirement. Part 5. Guadalcanal, the Proving Ground. When the U.S. Army's 164th Infantry Regiment arrived at Guadalcanal on October 13, 1942, they brought something the Marines desperately wanted: M1 Garand rifles. The Marines, still armed primarily with M1903 Springfield bolt-action rifles, watched with a mixture of envy and skepticism. During the climactic battle for Henderson Field on October 24 to 25, 1942, the advantages became undeniably clear. Private First Class James Cass of Company M, 164th Infantry, later recalled, "The Japs came at us in waves, barely visible in the darkness except for the glint of their bayonets. With our Garands, we could put 8 rounds into them before they covered 30 yards. Each man was like a machine gun section. We'd fire, the rifle would cycle itself, and we'd fire again. No working a bolt, no breaking our sight picture. Just squeeze, boom, squeeze, boom, 8 times before reloading." The 164th's companies were fed into the line piecemeal as the Japanese attack developed, reinforcing Marine positions that were beginning to buckle. The devastating semi-automatic fire from the fresh Army troops helped stabilize the line. Colonel Bryant Moore, commanding the 164th, reported that his men expended over 250,000 rounds of .30-06 ammunition in the 2-day battle. Japanese bodies stacked up in front of positions held by the 164th, many killed by the rapid accurate fire of M1 Garands. Marine Private Robert Leckie, who would later write the memoir Helmet for My Pillow, observed the Army troops in action. "We thought they were green, these dog faces with their newfangled rifles. But when the Japs charged, those Garands spoke with a voice we'd never heard before. It was like a continuous roar, not the sporadic crack of our Springfields." Part 6. The Enemy's Perspective. Sergeant Masuo Watanabe of the 29th Infantry Regiment, 2nd Division Sendai, survived the October offensive at Guadalcanal. In his post-war memoir discovered in Japanese military archives, he wrote with brutal honesty, "We were told the Americans were soft, that our Yamato spirit would overcome their material advantages. Our officers assured us that 1 Japanese soldier was worth 10 Americans. But when we charged their lines that October night, it was like running into a wall of lead. Every American soldier seemed to have an automatic weapon. Our Arisaka rifles, which we operated the same way our fathers had in the Russo-Japanese War, felt like antiques. We would fire once, work the bolt while taking cover, then fire again. In that same time, the Americans had already fired 4 or 5 rounds." Watanabe noted that Japanese tactics developed against Chinese forces, often armed with older weapons or limited ammunition, proved suicidal against American firepower. The banzai charge that had scattered Chinese conscripts melted away before American rifles that never seemed to stop firing. We could not get close enough to use our bayonets. Our supposed advantage in spirit and close combat meant nothing when we were shot down 50 meters from their lines. Lieutenant Hiroshi Tokahoshi of the 230th Infantry Regiment provided another perspective in a letter found on his body. "The American automatic rifles are devastating. Each soldier can fire as fast as our light machine guns. When we advance, it sounds like we are attacking a position defended entirely by machine guns. Our men fall before they can work their rifle bolts for a second shot." Part 7. Cape Gloucester, Testing in Hell. December 1943. Marines of the 1st Marine Division, now fully equipped with M1 Garands after their experience on Guadalcanal, landed in torrential rain on New Britain. Private First Class Eugene Sledge, author of With the Old Breed, later wrote about the M1's performance in horrific conditions. "That Garand was the most reliable piece of equipment we had. In rain that came down like waterfalls, in mud that sucked at you like quicksand, that rifle kept firing. The Japs with their bolt actions couldn't match our rate of fire. When they tried to set up positions in the jungle, we could put so much lead into the trees that leaves would fall like rain." Marine Sergeant John Basilone, who would earn the Medal of Honor on Guadalcanal primarily for his actions with machine guns, also carried an M1 Garand as his personal weapon. He noted, "The Garand gave every Marine the firepower of 3 men with bolt-action rifles. In the jungle, where you might only get a glimpse of the enemy for a second or two, being able to fire multiple shots without working a bolt meant the difference between killing him or him escaping to kill you later." Part 8. Saipan, the largest banzai charge. During the Battle of Saipan in June 1944, the largest banzai charge of the Pacific War saw over 3,000 Japanese soldiers assault American lines in a desperate pre-dawn attack on July 7. Private First Class Harold Agerholm of the 4th Marine Division, armed with his M1 Garand, helped repel the massive assault. Corporal John Miller recalled, "The Japs came at us shoulder to shoulder, screaming like banshees. Our Garands never stopped firing. As fast as we could pull the trigger, we fired. The ping of empty clips ejecting was constant, like some deadly music. The Japs with their bolt actions couldn't match our volume of fire. They'd get 1 shot off, maybe 2 if they were lucky, before our semi-autos cut them down." The mathematics were brutal and undeniable. A Marine firing at maximum effective rate could deliver 8 aimed shots in roughly 10 seconds, reload, and fire 8 more in the next 10 seconds. A Japanese soldier with an Arisaka, under the same time pressure and combat stress, might fire 5 rounds in 20 seconds if very well trained. Multiply that across hundreds of Marines along the defensive line, and the result was inevitable. The Banzai charge shattered against American firepower with horrific Japanese losses. Part 9. Pele Liu, Adaptation and Evolution. September 1944. The 1st Marine Division assaulted Pele Liu expecting another relatively quick victory. Instead, they encountered Japanese forces who had learned from earlier defeats. Gone were the wasteful Banzai charges. Colonel Kunio Nakagawa's forces defended from an elaborate system of fortified caves and bunkers carved into Pele Liu's coral ridges. Marine Corporal R.V. Bergin recalled, "When we spotted a position, we could saturate it with rifle fire. 4 or 5 of us with Garands could put 40 rounds into a cave mouth in the time it took them to fire 5 or 6 shots back. We'd keep their heads down while other Marines maneuvered with flamethrowers or demolitions." Even against prepared defensive positions, the M1 Garand's rapid-fire capability remained essential. Japanese defenders, armed primarily with bolt-action Arisaka rifles, couldn't generate enough return fire to stop American assault teams from closing on their positions. Part 10. Training and Doctrine. American training doctrine for the M1 Garand emphasized exploiting the rifle's semi-automatic capability while maintaining accuracy. At training camps across the United States, Fort Benning, Camp Perry, and dozens of others, soldiers spent weeks mastering their rifles. The Army's Field Manual 23-5 specified that soldiers should achieve a sustained rate of 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute in combat. Training emphasized maintaining proper sight alignment between shots since the semi-automatic action didn't require braking position. Soldiers learned to fire, observe impact, adjust, and re-engage quickly. Ammunition allocation for training was generous by any standard. Basic trainees fired a minimum of 210 rounds during qualification, with additional ammunition for advanced training. Combat units preparing for deployment often fired thousands of rounds per soldier. Japanese marksmanship training, rooted in samurai traditions of precision and discipline, emphasized the philosophy of one shot, one kill, Ichigeki Hisatsu. This principle reflected both spiritual beliefs about the warrior's focus and the practical limitation of bolt-action rifles. The Imperial Japanese Army's training manual stated, "The spirit of the attack must be the primary weapon of the infantry. The rifle and bayonet are merely extensions of the warrior's will." This emphasis on spiritual factors over material ones would prove catastrophic against American firepower. Part 11. The Psychological Dimension. The sound of massed M1 Garand fire became a psychological weapon itself. The rapid rhythmic crack of semi-automatic fire, punctuated by the distinctive metallic ping of ejecting clips, had a demoralizing effect on Japanese forces. A captured Japanese training document from 1943 instructed soldiers, "The American automatic rifles create a sound like many machine guns firing. Do not be discouraged by this volume of fire. Remember your spiritual superiority and press forward with determination." However, spiritual superiority proved inadequate against material reality. Japanese soldier Yukio Nakamura, captured on Saipan, told interrogators, "We were told Americans were cowards who relied on machines instead of warrior spirit. But their rifles that fired without stopping, it was like fighting against a machine, not men. Our officers told us to charge with our bayonets, but we were cut down before we could get close enough to use them." Conversely, American troops gained immense confidence from their firepower advantage. Marine Corporal James Russell recalled, "Knowing you could put 8 rounds down range as fast as you could pull the trigger, it made you feel invincible. When the Japs charged, you didn't panic. You just started shooting and kept shooting until they stopped coming or you heard that ping telling you to reload." Part 12. Squad and company level tactics. At the squad level, the M1 Garand's advantage became even more pronounced. An American rifle squad of 12 men armed with 10 M1 Garands and 2 Browning automatic rifles could deliver 400 to 500 aimed rounds per minute in sustained fire. A comparable Japanese squad with Arisaka rifles might manage 150 to 180 rounds per minute. This disparity fundamentally altered small unit tactics. American squads could effectively conduct fire and maneuver, with one fire team laying down suppressive fire while another advanced. The volume of accurate semi-automatic fire could keep enemy heads down, allowing American forces to close with and destroy Japanese positions. At company level, typically 200 men, the difference became overwhelming. During the October 24 to 25 battle for Henderson Field, Company G, 164th Infantry, reported expending 30,000 rounds of 30-06 ammunition in one night of fighting, an average of 150 rounds per man, while suffering only light casualties. The mathematics were inexorable. A Japanese battalion of 800 men conducting a banzai charge faced American companies capable of putting 8,000 aimed rounds downrange per minute. Even accounting for darkness, confusion, and fear, the volume of semi-automatic fire created kill zones that human courage alone could not overcome. Part 13. Japanese Recognition and Attempted Response. Japanese military documents captured throughout the war revealed increasing awareness of American firepower superiority. A report from Lieutenant General Harukichi Hyakutake, commanding the 17th Army on Guadalcanal, stated in November 1942, "Enemy rifle fire has density and accuracy beyond our expectations. Each enemy soldier appears to be armed with an automatic weapon. Our forces cannot achieve fire superiority even with numerical advantage. Recommend emphasis on night operations and infiltration tactics to negate enemy firepower advantage." By 1944, Japanese tactical doctrine had evolved to acknowledge American material superiority. Instructions for defenders of the Mariana Islands stated, "The enemy's automatic rifles and machine guns create an impenetrable wall of fire during daylight. All attacks must be conducted at night or under cover of adverse weather. Daytime movement invites annihilation." Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, the brilliant defender of Iwo Jima, wrote in January 1945, "The American automatic rifles are remarkable weapons. Each soldier possesses firepower equal to 3 or 4 of our riflemen. We must not waste lives in futile banzai charges against such firepower. Instead, we will make them pay for every meter of ground from fortified positions." The Japanese did attempt to develop semi-automatic rifles. When American forces captured the Yokosuka Naval Arsenal in 1945, they discovered the Type 4 rifle program. Engineers had reverse-engineered captured M1 Garands, modifying the design to use Japanese 7.7mm ammunition and feed from a 10-round internal magazine. The Japanese had even improved certain aspects, using a rubber recoil pad and adding a last-round bolt hold-open feature. However, Japanese industry proved incapable of mass-producing this complex design. While they had manufactured parts for approximately 250 rifles, only 100 to 125 had been assembled into complete weapons. The Type 4 program revealed that Japanese military engineers fully understood the M1's advantages but lacked the industrial infrastructure to produce it in meaningful numbers. Part 14. Okinawa, the Ultimate Test. April through June 1945. The Battle of Okinawa provided the ultimate test of American firepower versus Japanese determination. Here, on Japan's doorstep, 180,000 American troops faced 120,000 Japanese defenders in what would become the bloodiest Pacific battle. Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima had learned from previous defeats. Instead of wasteful banzai charges, his forces prepared elaborate defensive positions in Okinawa's rocky terrain. Yet even in defense, the limitations of bolt-action rifles proved critical. Private First Class Desmond Doss, the conscientious objector medic who would receive the Medal of Honor, later described the sound of American rifles supporting his rescue efforts. "The Garands were firing so fast it sounded like one continuous roar. Our boys could keep Japanese heads down while I went out for wounded. If they'd all had bolt-action rifles like the Japanese, I never could have saved those men." On May 4, 1945, the Japanese launched their only major counteroffensive of the battle. 5,000 soldiers attacked American lines following the largest artillery barrage Japanese forces had managed in the Pacific War, 12,000 rounds in 30 minutes. Private First Class Martin Brennan of the 17th Infantry Regiment recalled, "They came at us in waves, but not the wild banzai charges we'd seen before. These were organized attacks with fire support, but our Garands never stopped firing. 8 shots, ping, reload, 8 more shots. The noise was incredible. The Japanese with their bolt actions would fire once, maybe twice, then our semi-auto fire would cut them down." The attack shattered against American firepower with horrific Japanese losses, 4,000 dead versus 714 American casualties. Part 15. Operation Downfall, the invasion that never was. As Okinawa's bloody battle concluded, American military planners were deep into preparations for Operation Downfall, the invasion of the Japanese home islands. This operation would have been the largest amphibious assault in history. Production plans called for 500,000 replacement M1 rifles for the operation, with Springfield Armory and Winchester ramping up to produce a combined 2,000 rifles daily by August 1945. The ammunition requirement was staggering. Planners estimated needing 100 million rounds of .30-06 monthly for rifle use alone. Intelligence estimates suggested Japanese homeland defense would include 2.5 million Arisaka rifles in military hands, plus millions more distributed to civilian militia units. However, many were training rifles, obsolete models, or last-ditch single-shot weapons. The Type 99 substitute standard rifles being produced in 1945 were so crudely made that American intelligence questioned their safety for the shooter. The Arisaka rifle, once the pride of the Imperial Army, had been relegated to just one component of a desperate defense that included bamboo spears for civilians, suicide swimmers with explosive charges, and even biological weapons programs. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki ended the war before Operation Downfall commenced. Post-war analysis suggested American casualties could have reached 500,000 to 1 million, with Japanese casualties in the millions. The M1 Garand's firepower advantage would have been crucial, but at a terrible cost in lives on both sides. Part 16. Global Influence and Legacy. The M1 Garand's success influenced military rifle development worldwide. The Soviet Union developed the SKS carbine directly influenced by captured M1 Garands. China's Type 56 carbine was essentially a copy of the Soviet SKS. France developed the MAS-49. Even Britain began developing semi-automatic rifles immediately post-war. The M1 Garand continued serving through the Korean War, where it again proved superior to bolt-action rifles used by Chinese and North Korean forces. In early desperate months of that conflict, American forces armed with M1 Garands repeatedly stopped massive Chinese human wave attacks reminiscent of Japanese banzai charges. In a remarkable historical irony, the United States equipped the newly formed Japanese self-defense forces with M1 Garand rifles in the 1950s. Japanese soldiers who had faced the weapon now trained with it, experiencing firsthand the firepower advantage their predecessors had faced. The JSDF received approximately 150,000 M1 Garands through American military assistance programs. Part 17. Veterans' Reflections. Japanese veterans interviewed in the 1960s consistently cited American firepower as a decisive factor in their defeat. Soburo Sakai, Japan's leading surviving fighter ace, stated, "We could match American courage. We could match American tactics, but we could never match American firepower. Every GI with his automatic rifle was worth 3 of our soldiers." Colonel Masanobu Tsuji, a controversial staff officer who served in multiple theaters, wrote after the war, "We knew the Americans had superior weapons, but to acknowledge this openly would have destroyed troop morale. We had to maintain belief in spiritual superiority even as our soldiers were mowed down by American automatic weapons." Conclusion. The mathematics of victory. Back on that October night at Henderson Field in 1942, as Private Robert Young Deere and thousands of other American soldiers demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of semi-automatic rifle fire, they were proving a fundamental truth of modern warfare: technological superiority, backed by industrial production, could determine the outcome of battle regardless of human courage or determination. The M1 Garand delivered 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute versus the Arisaka's 15 to 20. 8 rounds before reloading versus 5. Semi-automatic operation versus manual bolt manipulation. These mathematical realities, multiplied across millions of individual firefights from Guadalcanal to Okinawa, helped determine the Pacific War's outcome. Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto, who led that charge on October 24, 1942, with his Type 38 Arisaka, did not survive to see the dawn. Found after the battle, his weapon had 3 rounds remaining in the magazine. He had managed to fire only twice while advancing 100 yards under concentrated fire of M1 Garands. Around him lay dozens of his soldiers, most with full or nearly full magazines, having been cut down before they could effectively return fire. The story of the M1 Garand versus the Arisaka rifles ultimately tells a larger truth about World War II in the Pacific. Courage and determination, while admirable and necessary, could not overcome the arithmetic of firepower. The United States had produced 5.4 million M1 Garands by war's end, ensuring that virtually every American rifleman possessed semi-automatic firepower. Japan, despite producing over 6.5 million rifles total, never escaped the technological constraints of bolt-action operation. General George S. Patton's assessment of the M1 Garand as the greatest battle implement ever devised was not hyperbole but mathematical fact. From the steaming jungles of Guadalcanal to the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima, from the monsoon-soaked horror of Cape Gloucester to the desperate defense anticipated for Japan itself, the M1 Garand proved itself as more than just a rifle. It was a war-winning weapon that gave American forces a decisive edge in the most brutal theater of the world's most terrible war. The distinctive ping of an ejecting EN block clip became the sound of American victory in the Pacific. Against it, the bolt-action Arisaka, for all its virtues of strength and accuracy, was simply fighting the last war with the last war's technology. In the final analysis, the Pacific War was won by the cumulative effect of American industrial might and technological superiority. The M1 Garand stood as perhaps the most visible symbol of this advantage at the individual soldier level. Every GI or Marine with an M1 possessed the firepower of 3 enemy soldiers, an advantage that no amount of spiritual training or warrior tradition could overcome. The Japanese soldier, brave as he was, dedicated as he was, skilled as he was, could work his rifle bolt only so fast. And in modern war, rate of fire multiplied by accuracy equaled survival. The last word belonged not to courage or spirit, but to the mechanical precision of gas-operated semi-automatic fire. 8 rounds, 1 pull of the trigger each, before that distinctive ping announced it was time to reload and continue the fight.